Kitco Mining's special coverage of the Gold Forum Americas is brought to you by Metalla Royalty and Streaming.
Osisko Mining is en route to developing another landmark Canadian gold mine. This is Paul Harris for Kitco Mining at the Gold Forum Americas in Colorado Springs. Joining me is John Burzynski, CEO and Chair of Osisko Mining. John, welcome to Kitco.
Thank you, Paul.
Now, Windfall in Quebec has been one of the most exciting and highest grade gold discoveries in Canada and the world in recent years, and you recently welcomed Goldfield as your development partner. Can you talk us through the deal and why it was structured as a partnership rather than perhaps the takeout that a lot of people were expecting?
Yeah, certainly. Well, first off, we've never been much of a takeout group. Many of the viewers may remember back in 2014, we had quite a bitter fight with Gold Corp regarding the Canadian Malartic mine. Sean Rosen, Bob Wares, and I started the original Osisko back in 2003. We acquired the property for $80,000. While everyone thought we were crazy, acquired the rest of the ground, raised the money, drilled about 1.2 million meters, moved 300 homes, got the construction team, financed the build for $1 billion after the financial crisis, built the mine, got it into production. And then Gold Corp showed up just as we were finishing the ramp up. It was a bitter fight. The initial $2.6 billion bid was eventually topped out to $4.3 billion by Agnico and Yamana, and we became a royalty company. Within a year, I restarted Osisko Mining Incorporated. We amalgamated a series of companies. The first asset was Windfall. And in the last 8 years, we've drilled 2 million meters this time, up to 35 rigs at a time. We've done over 12 kilometers of underground development. We have access to the deposit from surface to 650 meters. And it's, again, as you mentioned, another world-class deposit. Today, Canadian Malartic is the world's 9th largest gold deposit. It's Canada's largest single producer. It would have been the basis for another new intermediate Canadian mining company. What we were trying to do with this new version 2 of Osisko was do that exact same thing, but this time instead of bulk tonnage, low grade, high grade. And Windfall has turned out to be exactly that. It's 7.4 million ounces with an average grade of about 9-10 grams. The measured and indicated resource is 11.4 grams. That's what we used in our feasibility, but it's the largest single underground high grade mine ever discovered in Canada. So why we didn't do a takeout deal with Goldfields is because we believe it will end up being a substantial producer. The feasibility shows about 300,000 ounces per year over a 9-10 year mine life. But we certainly believe this is going to be a multi-decade asset. That 7.4 million ounce resource, we believe, will double in time or more. The deposit continues from the drilling that we've done down to at least 2.8 kilometers. Our resource only covers the first 1,200 meters. So having even half of that asset as a substantial producer in time will be of great benefit to the Osisko shareholders. I think ultimately it's going to have a cash flow and ounce per year production profile similar to Canadian Malartic when we started that.
And that's really turned into a cash cow for Agnico and Yamana, and now
it certainly
Agnico.
has. Yeah. If you go back and you look at that deal when we sold the company for a little over $4 billion in 2014. There was an iteration during the hostile takeover where if we'd have kept half of it with Yamana, and then long story short, it ended up being a full sale to Yamana and Agnico. You can imagine we sold that company for $9 a share. If we'd have kept half of that production to date, and it's done everything that we said it would, the original Osisko Mining Corporation share price would be a lot higher than $9. It's thrown off about $7 billion of free cash flow in the interim. Agnico paid a little over $2 billion for the first half when they came in with Yamana in 2014. The second half they bought recently from Yamana for about $3 billion. So certainly it would have been much more profitable for the original Osisko shareholders if we'd have kept it. So that was the thinking behind this. We'll sell half of it to a partner. It guarantees we get to keep it. We're fully financed, and really the last de-risking that we have is permitting and build.
Now, Canadian Malartic is in the Abitibi district. It's near Val d'Or. There's a lot of other multi-million ounce deposits in that area. Speaking with Amar Al-Jundi this morning of Agnico Eagle Mines, he's talking about, as Canadian Malartic goes from open pit to underground, that's going to free up a lot of capacity in their mill. And so the future plan there looks like one way or another, the company's going to be looking to suck in all of this other potential in the district. Now, Windfall's, you're further north. There isn't a lot of other development around you at the moment, but do you have the potential there perhaps for something similar? You know, as you build that, as you build Windfall, in the future, that may unlock a whole district?
We believe it will. The whole Urbanberry Quévillon camp that we control, and we control about 2,300 square kilometers. We've raised close to $1 billion in the last 8 years. We spent about 800 million of it on the work that we've done at Windfall. That's given us a world-class mine. But really all that money was spent within about a 5 square kilometer area on that 2,300 square kilometer district. And it really is a district that's analogous to the whole of the Val-d'Or camp or the Timmins camp. The geology is the same. We age dated all the porphyries when we initially acquired it in 2015. And it showed us that everything that was related to gold mineralization happened at the same time between 2.69 billion and 2.71 billion years ago, 2.72. Which is the identical age of the gold-bearing intrusives in the Timmins camp. And so, you know, what that told us was that Windfall shouldn't be a singularity. There should be dozens of Windfalls over time. And I think this was one of the things that attracted Gold Fields into the partnership. It wasn't just a world-class mine, which in itself was enough, but it comes with a district. And, you know, that whole land claim package has become part of the partnership with Gold Fields. So while we'll develop Windfall, and while we certainly think it's going to greatly expand in time and be a multi-decade asset, it's not just that. We think we're going to find many mines over time. So, you know, as a future for Osisko Mining, it's a company builder asset, and it's something where, you know, we're really unlocking a district. By comparison, the Val-d'Or camps and the Timmins camps, if you take the mines, the active mines out of there over the last 100 years, and each camp produced 100 million ounces plus, there were about 100,000 drill holes in exploration. When we got to the Urbanberry camp, there'd only been 1,000. And so it shows you the untapped potential of that camp. And I really think that Urbanberry camp is going to be the future of a lot of mining in Quebec. And it's where you're going to see lots of discoveries to come in the future.
And that's a very tantalizing prospect.
Yeah.
How's the development at Windfall? How are the plans coming along?
Plans are coming very well. You know, obviously we announced the deal with Gold Fields in May. We had a small fire during the summer. Not at camp, but, you know, in the region. Our Windfall camp was smack in the middle of the huge fires that Quebec experienced this summer. You know, I think in a typical year, there's something like about 75,000 hectares that get burned in Quebec with wildfires. This year it was about 1 million. So, you know, more than 10 times what's normal. We evacuated the camp and basically lost our summer exploration season. You know, the safety was first, obviously, but what it meant was about 6 weeks of not having the exploration drills out there on the ground. Everybody went back in August. Work is underway again. We've got about 10 drills underground, but we're just starting to do that regional exploration again.
Okay. And in terms of looking at the eventual development and building of Windfall, what are the sort of key milestones and timings that you're looking forward to there?
Right now, just the exploration. We started our permitting in March. Before we announced the deal with Gold Fields. Typically in Quebec for a mine like the one that we're building, it's about an 18-month process. So we would expect to come out of permitting within about 18 months. In the joint venture agreement, the work program over the next year or two includes the continuation of underground work on the ramp. As I mentioned earlier, the ramp goes down to about 650 meters vertical right now. We'll probably extend it another 100, potentially 200 meters vertical. And there is ongoing work at surface, things like the water containment. We have a lot of existing infrastructure, but once we come out of the permitting next year, then it's usually about a 2-month process to get your first construction release. And then we're looking at about a 12 to 18-month construction cycle. So we're looking at potential first pour in late 25 or first half of 2026.
That's not too long away, is it?
Not too long away. You know, it's any good mine is usually a 7 to 15-year cycle, depending on where you started in the current cycle. With Canadian Malartic, we were very fortunate. It was just at the beginning of the last gold cycle when we started the work. So it was an astoundingly quick 6 years and 1 month from our first drill hole in March of 2005 to our first gold pour in April of 2011. We're not repeating that here. As much as I would have loved to have beat that record, the difference between an underground mine and an open pit is you have to drill a lot more sterile to get to the ore intercept. So it's taken us that much more drilling to get the resource that we wanted to start with. Once we got past the 4 million measured and indicated mark, that gives us about 3.1 million ounces with the 300,000 ounce a year profile. So if people are wondering why has it taken longer, it's just it took that much more drilling to get the deposit defined properly. But yeah, we should be pouring first gold in, as I say, late 2025, early 2026.
Forward looking a little bit here, once Windfall is built, what will be next for Osisko?
More Windfall.
More Windfall.
Literally, if we did nothing for the next 10 years except further define the deposit, again, I'm very confident that we can double it in scale. Those deeper drill holes that we have, especially down to 2.8 kilometers, that's deep, but it's not worth us drilling those off right now because these are ounces that won't be mined for 20 or 30 years. We did put out one drill hole last fall. It was a 625 meter step out from the current resource wireframes, and I believe we intercepted something like 80 grams per ton over about 3.5 meters. So 2.5 ounces per ton. So it shows that the deposit continues with good width and good grade to depth. So I think there'll be a balance of near mine drilling. We're still seeing expansion laterally within the deposit as well. All of the resource growth in the last 5 years has come from that same 0 to 1,200 meter level. We haven't had to go deep to add ounces. Goldfields, as part of the deal, is also committed to spending $75 million on their part to gain their 50% interest in the rest of that concession. So you will see annual budgets of around $10 million. But if past experience is any judge, the first time we hit something interesting, that $75 million could be a 6-month budget. It's not limited in a time sense, but you really want to have some significant holes in a real discovery. And as you've seen us do in the past, it's pretty quick to ramp up to 20 or 30 or 35 drills.
Now, share prices at the moment for junior gold explorers, junior gold developers are sort of pretty low. Market capitalizations are very low. On the one hand, that perhaps represents a great opportunity for companies to go out and build a development pipeline. To what extent or not do you feel with Osisko Mining a certain vulnerability there? You've been the subject of a hostile takeover attempt in the past. Given where your share price is at the moment, do you fear that you may get a hostile takeover again for somebody to come in and try and get 50% of Windfall?
Hostile takeovers are rare in the business in any sense, and then even when they're launched, they're rarely successful. You really have to convince shareholders that there's a reason to pry a company out of another company's hands or pry it out of the current operator's hands. Part of the rationale, I think, for taking a joint venture partner was to mitigate some of that risk. Obviously, first and foremost, it was about having the nearly $800 million amount of money to build the mine. We were looking at debt or debt and equity scenarios for a long time. Goldfields approached us, and we weighed the balance, and at the end of the day, we took the deal. So our financial risk to build the mine has been removed, but there aren't a lot of companies out there that are looking to buy half a deposit. Now, when you're dealing with a world-class deposit like Windfall that has very high grade, if we were in operation today, we'd be, I think, the 8th or 9th highest grade operating mine in the world based on our diluted grade. I think that by the time it's in operation, that will come down to about the top 3 or 5. I suppose there is some jeopardy there. If you look at our market cap of $1 billion, we're relatively trading at cash. We've got about 425 to 450 million of cash and equity positions in the company right now. There's another approximately $317 million of payments coming from Goldfields in the deal that we wrote. If we were pro forma to have warrants and options and things outstanding, and considering our tax pools come into the money, it's basically $1 billion of cash value in the company at $1 billion market cap. So our half of Windfall, which again arguably starts at 300,000 ounces a year, we think can go to 4 or higher. We're trading at cash value. The deposit has 0 value on it. We're not alone in the business right now. We trade at about a 0.5 multiple. Typically that's not unusual for the development companies. It is lower than we've seen in other cycles. The current senior and intermediate operators are all looking to replace resources, but there hasn't been a lot of movement on M&A. But ultimately, if they want to replace those resources, they're going to have to resort to M&A. because there just haven't been a lot of discoveries out there, made in the last 15 or 20 years. There hasn't been enough money going into exploration.
Why don't you think the bigger companies have been more active in M&A and really perhaps trying to take advantage of these low share prices to sort of lock in their pipelines?
Yeah, it's a funny thing, and I think it comes down to license from your own shareholders. What do you think you should be doing? Typically, and it's inverse logic, you don't tend to see a lot of M&A until markets are really frothy. Everyone's got a higher share price.
Fear of missing out.
Yeah, fear of missing out, and if you look back at most of the M&A in the last 10 or 15 years, it tends to happen at the peak of a market. We haven't had much of a market at all since the sort of 2011, 2012. Even when Canadian Malartic was sold, we were trading at an all-time low. We were at about $5.50, I think, if I remember. And Goldcorp came in with people forget this, it was about a 15% premium bid, hostile, to buy the company. And they thought they had it in the bag. Ultimately, we almost doubled that share price to sell the company for $4 billion, but they almost acquired Canadian Malartic for next to nothing. It feels a little bit like that market right now. Truly, Windfall is a valuable asset. It's undervalued, or in my opinion, has a very low value with respect to what's in the company in terms of cash and other assets. I don't know that there's a lot of license out there from shareholders for the seniors to go out and just start acquiring things. Certainly, they need the production, but having Gold Fields as a partner again is at least a semi-form of protection, because obviously they now have a strong vested interest and probably aren't looking for a dance partner.
I think it's very interesting because the senior gold companies have done a lot in recent years to appeal to or appease investors.
Yep.
Capital discipline, strengthened balance sheets, returns to shareholders, nothing crazy on the M&A front, multi-year production guidance, and yet they still don't resonate with the market.
And increased share buybacks and increased dividends. They've kind of gone through everything that they can do, but ultimately at the end of the day, all producing companies have a declining balance of resource. And in order to maintain, what's the hypothetical value of the company, you have to replace those ounces somewhere. And certainly if they're looking at things with a 0.5 multiple and they're trading at 1 times NAV, anything is accretive. A lot of the senior producers have been active on other acquisitions in the last year or two. So I think there's sort of a limited ability of say the top 5 or 10 to do things. But there are lots of active companies out there who would like to do something, but it's part of the issue, I think, for everybody is that there are a lack of perceived assets.
Is there a possibility or a danger even that the gold producers become too boring and that maybe secretly investors want a bit of excitement?
Certainly investors want lots of excitement. Discoveries always drive share prices and then tend to drive the market. Big M&A transactions do the same thing. Again, back to the Canadian Malartic with the example of 2014 with Goldcorp, that spurred the market for a good 6 months. We were in play, and my business partner Sean Rosen's favorite comment at the time was, every once in a while, one of the zebras has to go down at the water hole for the rest of them to get a drink. We just never thought we'd be that zebra. It's a similar thing, because what happens during a takeover is you get a lot of arbitrage players come in, money circulates, but now the fund managers have some money to recirculate. So everybody benefits. I think if there were some larger transactions, certainly it would be beneficial for the market. And once people start to see that they can make money in mining companies again, I think we're going to see a lift in the market.
Well, what are you most excited about over the next 12 to 18 months? And what are going to be some of the key catalysts we see coming out of the Windfall project?
As I mentioned earlier, we have really only 2 remaining de-risking factors. Mining in itself is a de-risking process. When you start looking for something, there's 100% risk for the investor in the company because you may never find it. And then successively, as you find it, define it, finance it, build it, you decrease that risk. We've decreased it to the point where we only have to wait for permits, and then there's construction risk. But those are manageable. Basically what happens over the next 18 months is we get our permits, we start our build, and all things being equal, and we all know that nothing ever goes wrong during permitting or build. So, the permitting is a risk we don't control. Construction is one that we do. Luckily, when we built Canadian Malartic, we'd projected 27 months to build. We did it in 19. I think Windfall, we're projecting sort of 12 to 18 months. If we hit the start of construction at the right time, it may be a little faster. So minimal risk. As far as points of interest to the market, certainly once we cross that risk barrier and get into production, then we're fully de-risked, and I think that'll be the key catalyst, is getting into production.
Well, congratulations on getting your development partner, and good luck with the Windfall permitting.
Thanks very much, Paul.
John Burzynski, thanks for joining us today.
My pleasure.
And this is Paul Harris for Kitco Mining at the Gold Forum Americas in Colorado Springs. And if you like what you see, don't forget to subscribe.
Kitco Mining's special coverage of the Gold Forum Americas is brought to you by Metalla Royalty and Streaming.